Welcome back to Picture Lock, where we focus on film. I'm talking with the director of DC's Office of Motion Pictures, Television, and Development, Mr. Pierre Bagley. Pierre, man, I appreciate you coming on the show. This has been a great conversation thus far. So, Pierre, tell us, how did you get to DC and becoming appointed as the director of the MPTD?
Well, talk about the flight of the bumblebee, Kevin. I was talking to you earlier about this next picture I was doing in Iceland. And after having just finished From the Rough, one of the things that I knew I didn't want to do in independent film, you really start all over again. You got to go raise the money, you got to go through this whole thing. And as much fun as it is, it's really a chore. So while I was in Iceland, I had actually raised half the money. And I got a call from a friend who was actually the chief of staff of the deputy mayor, who was actually the attorney for From the Rough, worked for me. And he said, there may be an opportunity here. Would you consider running the motion picture office? And I was really kind of like, no, because it wasn't something that was interested me. I've worked with a lot of film offices, and nothing against it. I'm a filmmaker, right? So he said, well, you should come and meet the deputy mayor and perhaps the mayor if things work out. So I thought, okay, I'll give it a shot. So when I came back to the country, I came in to meet Victor Hoskins, who's deputy mayor of economic development. And I have to just tell you, I was really impressed with his vision, and I was really impressed with what he said to me. He said, listen, we recognize that you're a filmmaker, and what we want you to do is reimagine this place for us. You know, we want you to bring your signature to it. And I started thinking about it, and by the time I left, and also I have to tell you that I really got the sense that DC had really evolved, and the fact that President Obama was here. I really felt a historical almost calling, because I hadn't really thought about any of this before. But when I got to DC and walked into the Wilson Building, which is 1350 Pennsylvania, it's a block and a half from the White House, I just really had this sense that this is where I could make the biggest difference. And when I met the mayor and I came back, it was really during the time that Mandela had died. And he came in and he had done a memorial service with Vice President Biden. And I'm thinking, you know, I'm talking to this man, this very important man who's really acknowledging a world figure. World history is happening right here. And I just figured I needed to be here. And he basically said, you know, whatever you need, whatever resources you need, I'd love for you to come in and tell us what you need. And all of a sudden, this job became the most important opportunity I'd ever had. And I had not worked for anyone, as you know, since 1978. So going to work for a paycheck, not to mention the government, was a real change for me. And I have to tell you, I've just loved every second of it. I think this is an amazing time in the history of this world and certainly of this country. And I think media, as you know, has so much to do about how people know you and what we think of each other. So I thought this was going to be my place, and I needed to be here. And I've meeting you, the people in this area are a whole different breed of people than they are in California. And frankly, I think the people in California take for granted this business, and they don't look at the 360-degree person. So I've been really impressed with the caliber of passion, the caliber of execution, and just the love and passion for film and filmmaking here.
Right. Yeah. I mean, definitely. I couldn't agree with you more. You know, a little while ago, I had the panel episode of sustainable filmmaking in the DMV, and I just feel like this is one of those places, and I think we've even discussed this before. This is one of these places where you can make things happen, and it doesn't have to take as much red tape as it might take if you're in New York or LA, but it's still a big enough city and big enough hub where you can really get things going.
Right.
So one of my questions, I guess, just as the director, what is your vision for this area? And you know, we've talked so far about you as the filmmaker and coming up to now. So as a filmmaker, you know, in this position, what's your vision?
Well, my vision, you have to understand kind of what this market is right now, right? So what you have is a huge nonfiction group of artists and artisans. What you don't have is any infrastructure for motion picture or long form fiction television. Zero. Like there is zero post-production finishing. Now, there are many companies who can finish a film, but not necessarily are they finishing them. That's a different issue. Audio post. There's no audio post for film, long form film, in the region, and so and in DC proper, there's not even a camera company, whether it's Red or Panavision or Arri or whatever. So as I looked at it, I thought, well, there's the opportunity. And so my vision was to, number one, move the film office out of the just permitting part of it. And, as you know, DC has a tough reputation for being film friendly.
Right.
And I think it's really, if you look at it as a filmmaker, and that's what we did instantly. We started talking to our permit coordinators and saying, look, you've got to give the same level of service you would if you were in the business. And so I just basically said I was going to get the film office in the business. And so we've really raised our level of permit coordination, where now we're coordinating between the Metropolitan Police Department, the Secret Service, the Capitol Park Police, the National Parks Police. And we're taking that on as my responsibility to say, even though we may not be the permitting agency if you have to shoot in the Capitol, we want the production companies to make us their first point of contact, and we'll walk them through it. So it's much more film business savvy. And at the same time, I'm wanting to go out and attract some basically investment financing here, which we have none. There are no banks that focus on financing film, and there's no distribution for feature films. So with financing and distribution, I think this market is ready to go. But as you know, most of us either have to go to New York or LA, and most often LA, to get financing and distribution. Those two go hand in hand. And I've only been here 4 months, and I have to tell you, we're already starting to succeed along those lines.
Wow, that's great. I mean, and Pigmental Studios, an animation house out of LA, is moving here to DC. I'm sure you probably had something to do with that deal. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, my office, we led that effort. And Pigmental happens to be led by the co-producer of my film, Blahman. So it was really me saying to them, being empowered by the mayor, to say, go out and tell me what you need. And because of the mayor's ability and his vision to give me the resources that we needed, I was able to go to Pigmental, even though we didn't have film incentives. We were able to incent them to come. But the difference is you cannot incent someone to come and work in an environment for just money. They have to, just like the days of Hemingway going to South America to write, or Gershwin going to Europe to compose, or, Givenchy designing in Paris. This DC is a place for creation. And if you're talking to a pure creative people, they get it. Pigmental got it. And once we were able to woo them away from New Mexico, who was offering 35 and 30% film incentives on roughly $160 million worth of production.
Wow.
And they decided to come to DC, and these are animators who have done Despicable Me, Frozen, How to Train Your Dragon. These are world-class animators from Pixar, Disney, and they're going to live in the district. So that's huge. To me, that's foundational. That gives us the resources now to make it easier for you or for another filmmaker to either find financing or distribution.
And I guess that was the question that I was going to ask you, is what does that mean, having them in our area, for the producers and filmmakers that are in this area and even the residents of DC?
Well, I'll give you a good example. The first week, Marina Martins, who is the principal behind Pigmental, we had a table read at my office for a small independent film that she's backing that's being shot in Scotland. Why? The investors know her, and she was able to arrange financing. So the filmmakers think films right here in DC. So instantly it changes the paradigm, because if you love film, you love filmmakers, and you want to be part of the community. And Marina wants to be part of our community, and she instantly reached out. So within a week of her being here, she was already helping a small independent film get made and on its way to distribution.
Okay. Wow. I mean, I know that's a great thing, and I'm looking forward to seeing the company come here and just seeing how it boosts our economy, but also for our fellow filmmakers. So transitioning a little bit, there's plenty of people that heard you were coming on the show. They're like, we got questions, and I'll get into the questions in a little bit. But first, I've been in the DMV since 2008, so I'm no veteran. I didn't grow up here, but it's not a secret, as you said, this area in terms of the filmmakers here don't have the best relationship with the DC Motion Picture Office. And as we were discussing even on the panel episode, part of it is access. And you were kind of touching on this a little bit, but if you could just spell it out a little bit more. One of the things that everyone brought up is just the ease of access for filmmakers that are here to actually be able to go and shoot, the monuments or, the iconic photos that we usually see in film. So can you just explain what maybe the issue is in regards to access? Because I know you've said before that part of it is constitutional, but at the same time, like what are you working on right now to make access easier for those of us that are here?
Well, we're working on a small scale permit that small scale producers, someone with a tripod, maybe no more than a crew of 3, with not a lot of sound, not a lot of requirements to block off streets, block off sidewalks, that they can get a small, low-priced annual permit that will also allow them to park within, DC proper, in places that they couldn't traditionally park. And so we're working on that, and we've run that up the ladder with the Department of Transportation, DDOT here, and it seems to not have gotten any pushback. So we think that there are literally thousands of small-scale producers who meet that criteria, and who can get in, get that shot, use it for their productions and or sell it as B-roll, when our permitting process sometimes can take 10 days. And if there was a shot that you needed to get that the sun broke in the right time, so now you have the ability to go get it done. So I think it's really just taking a filmmaker's point of view for the film office. And collectively, I think we can solve most of the problems. We're not going to solve the constitutional issue of a family from Idaho who wants to enjoy a national monument, and you want to block them off from that. I think that becomes the one thing that's never going to change. This is the people's city. And so I think that when it comes to that, the filmmaking part, it will always sort of take second shrift. But there's a lot of ways to work around that.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, that sounds amazing. Is there a date set on when that'll actually...
this is election season. So in this transition, we really had that ready to go. And then, with the election working itself out and the transitions having to come, there's a different group of people that really need to come in and have their point of view heard. But I can tell you that the reason why I'm here, I've met no one yet in the District of Columbia government who doesn't believe we need to find a way to make the whole infrastructure more accessible to filmmakers. But I think it has to be a two-way street. Filmmakers have to understand that this is a unique city on the planet. You've got the President of America and all those dignitaries who live here. So it's not New York and it's not LA, and he will always take first priority if you want to block a street. Okay. So there's a complexity here that we all have to live with, but I think it's worth it.
Right. All right, so let's get into some of the Q&A. Alex asked, how can the DC Film Office help young filmmakers and crew looking to break into the production world?
Well, the first thing I say, Alex, is that you have to be the one to make that happen. What we can do is support you and find opportunities for you, which is what we're doing now. We do the Filmmaker of the Month series. We're working with, for example, the state lottery that's going to give us a certain amount of the traditional production dollars they usually put into their commercials to let us go out and find the new emerging filmmakers and sort of help become a a service that makes them accessible, as opposed to going through the whole advertising agency route.
Okay. Pamela was asking about DC Real Crew, and so she was wondering, will you let individual actors slash crew sign up in the database if they live anywhere in the DMV? And she said that if you look at it now, it's only about 12 actors, and so I guess it's just in regards to registration. Can they hire locally?
Well, that's a good question, and I've not tackled this regional issue yet. Obviously I'm the DC commissioner, and I'm in Virginia, so I believe we're going to have to take a regional approach. Literally, I just met with the people who run Real Crew and Real Scout, and we're looking at that right now to see how we can open it up. But it's really going to take a lot of cooperation between Maryland, Virginia, and DC, because at the end of the day, if you're using DC residents' tax money, then I've got to make a case to the taxpayer why we should give their money and pay for someone that doesn't pay taxes in the district. And that's something that we have to work out together.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, and this is before we get to the next question, but I think being in this area with the DMV, so many times it's like we kind of want to lump ourselves together,
right.
Because it is, you can be in Virginia, DC, and Maryland in the span of 20 minutes,
right.
So, but I do find that it's interesting that you just have to face kind of how to join all.
And I think we're going to have to do, for example, DC will always be land challenged, right? So you could do a deal where you say, okay, let's put the big trucks and the honey wagons and things like that in Virginia and Maryland. Maybe even the big studios that make no sense because they're too expensive to try to execute in DC. And maybe the talent, maybe post-production, maybe the audio post-production, maybe we can become a sort of a regional entertainment complex, because to your point, it's only 15 minutes. It's no different from going from Brooklyn to Manhattan, or in LA from Burbank to Santa Monica. That's like an hour and a half.
Right.
So certainly we can do it. I think it's just going to take the cooperation between not only the artists, but the film commissioners, the other two film commissioners, and I have to sit down and come up with a way that says, okay, let's break these pieces off and we'll specialize in these and make the whole region stronger.
Okay. Michael asked, and he said, if the answer is yes, then don't say anything because he wants it for himself. But he said, is there any money that he could get for making films from, going to the DC office?
Making films, you mean, would we?
Any money, any startup, I guess.
Well, right now, the short answer is no, because we don't have an incentive program because we're rethinking it. I think incentives, frankly, are a disincentive to building the kind of indigenous infrastructure we need. I think we need to, as I said earlier, we need to invest in distribution, financing, and some infrastructure. But if I just incent filmmakers, then what I'm saying to you is come here for 3 or 4 months, do your thing, and go away. So that's not building our indigenous community. So to me, and you see the issues that House of Cards is having in Maryland, at the best case, when they leave Maryland after this season, Maryland would have given them over $40-some-odd million. And the question you have to ask yourself, what could we have done with that money? Whether it's Maryland, Virginia, or DC. And I think those economics work as well for us. For example, for us to provide a film fund for filmmakers, all filmmakers. There's only a few people who really benefit from House of Cards in terms of, I don't think you'd benefit. I think there's a lot of people who don't benefit from House of Cards. And I think we have to try to service the entire segment, independent, video, digital, editing, not just the location people.
Right. And do you think maybe down the line there would be like some kind of film fund? And I'm saying for DC filmmakers.
Absolutely. I think once we get the infrastructure built and we've now got filmmaking happening here, then we want to incent people, and that is part of our sort of long-term strategy. And I'm saying not long-term as in years and years, but once we have the indigenous piece done and we have the artists coming here, the equipment coming from here, and most of the personnel, then we want to incent people to come here. But I think that's like 4 or 5 on the list and not number 1. Right now, people talk about film incentives as it's the only thing that one can do to bring films to the area.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Last question. Janessa said, do you have opportunities for locals to volunteer with the office or roles for people who aren't necessarily making films but want to know more and get involved?
Well, we have a very robust internship program, and it's not volunteer, they're paid. And they're actually starting now. And we want to make that even more robust as we broaden our mission within the filmmaking community. And so I think there will be opportunities coming up because we're in the process of expanding the staff of the film office right now. But I think internship, to me, volunteer is you really want accountability. And I think if you're around, you don't want to just go get coffee. You want to be asked to do something that's meaningful, that you can get something from that and we can get something from that. So I'm not a big fan of just free interns running around.
Right. Well, hey, that's great. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of people listening or watching that would like to sign up for the program.
Sure.
So, how can people get in contact with you or get connected with the film office?
Well, we're an easy site, film@dc.gov. There's a lot going on. Filmmaker of the Month, Location of the Month. We're starting to expand a lot of our outreach to the community, and we read every email that's sent to us, and I'm easy to find. I can't guarantee you that I can get to that call immediately, but we've got a really great staff of professionals at the office who are really passionate about filmmaking, and that passion is growing by the day.
Wow. Okay. That's great. It was really good seeing you most recently. You and I, we spoke on the red carpet at the GI Film Festival. And so I just want to say, for me personally, like I said, I haven't been here super long, and definitely I feel like I'm kind of starting to get into the circles of the film community in D.C., Maryland, Virginia. But it was really good just to see you out on the carpet, and I feel like I do get that vibe that the film office is really kind of supporting the films that are coming out. So that was awesome seeing you out there, and I'm sure I'll continue to see you out there.
Sure.
So please keep up the good work in the office. It's been great talking to you. I really do appreciate you coming on the show.
It was great, Kevin. Thank you for having me, and you're gonna keep seeing me out there for real.
All right,
okay,
thanks.
Thank you.
All right, director of the DC Office of Motion Pictures, Television and Development, Pierre Bagley. Thanks again. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.